Doctors said Maya would never move again after the accident that left her paralyzed and orphaned. On the edge of giving up, she encountered a dying cat dragging its broken body beneath a garden bench. What happened next shocked medical experts. Worldwide, Maya's paralyzed hand suddenly moved, reaching for the suffering animal. Their connection sparked a healing so profound and inexplicable that doctors are still struggling to understand the miracle that transformed both their lives forever. The afternoon sunlight filtered through dust-streaked windows, casting long shadows across the abandoned rehabilitation center's empty therapy room. Outside, autumn winds whipped fallen leaves into miniature cyclones against the chain-link fence that surrounded the facility scheduled for demolition. In this forgotten corner of Millersville, where most people hurried past with averted eyes, two broken souls were about to cross paths in a way that would defy medical explanation. 12-year-old Maya Henderson sat motionless in her wheelchair, staring at the overgrown garden through the glass doors. Her once vibrant eyes now held a distant emptiness that mirrored her paralyzed limbs, casualties of the same accident that had claimed her parents 6 months earlier. The doctors had been clear. The spinal injury was permanent. She would never walk again, never dance, never feel the grass beneath her toes. Her Aunt Caroline, overwhelmed by sudden guardianship and mounting medical bills, had wheeled Maya into this condemned building's garden one last time, the garden where Maya had once volunteered with her mother, before everything changed. What neither of them knew was that beneath the weathered garden bench, barely clinging to life, lay a severely injured tabby cat. Its matted fur was caked with blood, one eye swollen shut, ribs protruding sharply against its skin. Each labored breath seemed likely to be its last. The stray had dragged itself here after being struck by a car and left for dead on the nearby road, guided by some inexplicable instinct to this particular spot, directly in the path of a girl who hadn't moved voluntarily since the accident. No one could have predicted that when Maya's lifeless fingers unexpectedly twitched toward this dying creature, both their fates would be forever altered by what witnesses would later call nothing short of a miracle. Before the accident, Maya had been the brightest dancer in her youth ballet company, with dreams of performing on grand stages. That December evening, as snow blanketed the rural roads, her father had swerved to avoid a deer, sending their car tumbling down an embankment. When Maya woke in the hospital weeks later, she learned her parents were gone, and so was her ability to move below her shoulders. The doctors used clinical terms like complete C5 spinal cord injury and quadriplegia, but what it meant in Maya's 12-year-old mind was simpler. Her life was over. Aunt Caroline, her mother's older sister, had taken her in despite having no experience with children or disabilities. Their small apartment wasn't wheelchair accessible. The medical costs were overwhelming, and Caroline's job as a night shift nurse meant Maya spent most days with rotating caregivers who treated her like a task to be completed. Today's outing to the old rehabilitation center was Caroline's attempt at connection. "Your mom always talked about how much you loved volunteering in this garden," she had said while pushing Maya's wheelchair through the overgrown paths. But the garden only reminded Maya of everything she had lost. "I'll be right back," Caroline had promised, stepping inside to speak with the property manager about taking some plant cuttings before demolition. Just 15 minutes. Left alone with her thoughts, Maya stared blankly at the withered roses and crumbling stone pathways. She hadn't spoken a word in 6 months, hadn't smiled, hadn't shown any interest in recovery. The physical therapists had given up trying to engage her, and her neurologist had started discussing long-term care options. What use was living when you were trapped in a body that wouldn't respond? Maya had been asking herself that question every day until the faint, pained mewling sound from beneath the bench caught her attention, stirring something deep inside her dormant spirit. The tabby cat had once belonged to old Mrs. Winters, who had named him Apollo for his golden eyes. For 5 years, Apollo had known comfort and love, until Mrs. Winters passed away in her sleep. Her children, allergic and disinterested, had simply put him outside and sold the house. For months, Apollo had roamed the streets of Millersville, his sleek coat growing matted, his confident purr fading to silence. Locals at the community center occasionally left food for him, recognizing him as that poor Winter's cat. Children would try to pet him, but Apollo would dart away, trauma having taught him that humans were unpredictable, their kindness temporary. The rehabilitation center's garden had become his sanctuary, until that morning when, distracted by hunger, he had darted across the road. The impact had been devastating. Pain exploded through his small body as he was thrown into the ditch. The driver never stopped. Using the last of his strength, Apollo had dragged himself toward the only place that felt safe, the garden, with its familiar smells of lavender and rosemary. Each movement sent agony through his broken body. His right hind leg hung at an unnatural angle, his ribs cracked with each breath, and blood matted the fur around his neck, where a deep gash continued to seep. By the time he collapsed, beneath the bench, Apollo's golden eyes were clouding over. He had no strength left to search for water, no energy to cry out. The internal bleeding was progressing rapidly, his breaths growing more shallow. In the world of stray animals, this was how life often ended, alone, in pain, unnoticed. Then, the wheelchair had appeared on the path, and something about the girl's scent stirred a distant memory. She smelled of antiseptic and hospitals, but underneath that was something else. Grief, the same heavy emptiness he had carried since losing Mrs. Winters. Apollo managed a small whimper, perhaps his final communication with the world. At first, Maya thought she was imagining the sound, a faint mewling coming from beneath the bench. Turning her head slightly, all she could manage with her limited mobility, she caught a glimpse of matted fur and a single golden eye staring back at her. The cat was barely moving, its sides heaving with labored breaths. Something shifted inside. Maya, a feeling she couldn't identify after months of emotional numbness. Here was another being, suffering even more immediately than she was. The cat's eye held a plea that required no translation. "Hello," Maya whispered, her voice creaking from disuse. It was the first word she had spoken since the accident. The cat responded with another weak sound, attempting to lift its head, but failing. Maya could see now how badly injured it was. Blood staining its fur, one leg twisted unnaturally, ribs visible through its coat. "You're dying," she said softly, a simple observation rather than a question. She recognized the look in the cat's eye, the same empty resignation she saw in her own reflection each morning. What happened next defied explanation. Maya's right hand, which had remained motionless for 6 months despite intensive physical therapy, twitched. Her fingers, once as unresponsive as stone, trembled slightly. The neurologists had insisted this was impossible, given the severity of her spinal injury. Maya focused all her concentration on that hand, feeling something awaken along pathways long considered dead. Her fingertips tingled with pins and needles. Sensation, where there had been none. Slowly, painfully, her arm moved an inch forward, then another, reaching toward the suffering animal. "I can't help you," she whispered, tears filling her eyes as her fingers stretched outward. "I can't even help myself." But the cat, seeing her movement, made a tremendous effort of its own. It dragged itself forward on its front paws, closing the distance between them until its nose touched Maya's fingertips. A bridge formed between two broken souls. Dr. Eliza Tanner had spent 15 years as a veterinarian before burnout drove her to accept a position cataloging medical equipment at the soon-to-be-demolished rehabilitation center. The job was mindless, but it gave her space to heal from years of euthanizing animals she couldn't save due to owners' financial constraints. She was inventorying cabinets near the garden windows when movement caught her eye, a girl in a wheelchair, and what appeared to be an injured animal. Curious, Eliza moved closer to the glass, then gasped as she witnessed the impossible. The clearly paralyzed girl's hand was moving toward the cat, grabbing her emergency medical bag, a habit she hadn't. Abandoned, Eliza rushed outside. As she approached, she saw the girl's fingers make contact with the cat's head, and something extraordinary happened. Both the girl and the cat became absolutely still, their connection appearing almost electrical in its intensity. "Hello there," Eliza called softly, not wanting to startle them. "I'm a veterinarian. That cat needs help immediately." The girl's tear-filled eyes met hers. "Please," she whispered, "save him." Eliza knelt beside the bench, her trained eyes quickly assessing the cat's injuries. "He's in critical condition, internal bleeding, broken bones, severe trauma." She gently examined the cat, who surprisingly didn't resist. "I need to get him to a clinic right away." "I can't leave him," the girl said, her voice gaining strength. "I felt him. I felt something through my hand." Eliza noticed the girl's hand was still extended, still making contact with the cat. "I can't leave him," the girl said, her voice gaining strength. "I felt him. I felt something through my hand." Eliza noticed the girl's hand was still extended, still making contact with the cat. As a scientist, Eliza didn't believe in mystical connections, but she couldn't deny what she was seeing. A profoundly injured cat allowing examination without resistance, and a paralyzed girl moving parts of her body that medical science would deem impossible. "Oh, what's your name?" Eliza asked, already pulling out emergency supplies from her bag. "Maya," the girl answered, "and I think he needs me as much as I need him." Aunt Caroline returned to find a stranger administering emergency care to a bloodied cat. While Maya watched intently, her right hand extended in a way Caroline hadn't seen since before the accident. "What's happening here?" she demanded, rushing forward. Dr. Tanner looked up from her work. "This cat is dying. I've stabilized him temporarily, but he needs surgery immediately." She finished applying a pressure bandage to the cat's worst wound. "I'm Dr. Eliza Tanner, former veterinarian at Westside Animal Hospital. My niece can't be exposed to—" Caroline began, but Maya's voice interrupted her. "He found me, Aunt Caroline," Maya said, her eyes clear and focused for the first time. "In months, I felt my hand move. I reached for him." Caroline froze, staring at Maya's extended hand with disbelief. "You moved your hand by yourself?" Dr. Tanner carefully lifted the cat onto a makeshift stretcher from her emergency kit. "Whatever's happening here is remarkable. Your niece moved voluntarily, and this cat, who should be too injured to allow handling, is responding to her touch." Caroline hesitated, torn between medical skepticism and the undeniable fact that Maya was speaking, engaging, showing interest in something for the first time since the accident. "My clinic closed last month," Dr. Tanner explained, "but I still have access to the surgical suite. I can operate there, but we need to hurry." "Please, Aunt Caroline," Maya begged, tears streaming down her face. "He came to me for a reason." Something in Maya's voice, a spark of the determined girl who had existed before the accident, made Caroline's decision. "Fine. Let's go." Within minutes, they were racing across town in Caroline's sedan. The cat stabilized on Dr. Tanner's lap in the front seat, while Maya, for the first time, seemed alert and engaged in the back. The cat's golden eye remained fixed on Maya through the car's separation, as if their connection transcended physical distance. "What will you name him?" Dr. Tanner asked as they pulled up to the shuttered clinic. "Phoenix," Maya answered without hesitation, "because we're both going to rise again." The next 3 hours were the most tense of Maya's young life. From her wheelchair positioned just outside the surgical suite's observation window, she watched Dr. Tanner work methodically to save Phoenix's life. Aunt Caroline stood beside her, alternating between amazement at Maya's engagement and concern for her emotional state should the cat not survive. "Splenectomy complete," Dr. Tanner murmured to her impromptu surgical assistant, a former technician, who had responded to her emergency call. "Leg fracture stabilized, but these internal injuries are severe." Twice, Phoenix's heart rate dropped dangerously low. Each time, Maya leaned forward in her wheelchair, her right hand pressed against the gas, whispering, "Fight, Phoenix, please fight." Perhaps most remarkable was what Caroline observed in her niece. Maya's left hand, which had been as unresponsive as her right until today, now twitched occasionally in her lap. Sensations seemed to be returning in unpredictable ways that defied medical explanation. "Dr. Tanner says it's touch and go," Caroline explained gently. "Phoenix might not make it, Maya. Are you prepared for that possibility?" Maya's eyes never left the operating table. "He'll make it. We both will." When Dr. Tanner finally emerged, her surgical cap stained with sweat, her expression was cautiously optimistic. "He survived the surgery, which is honestly miraculous considering his condition. The next 24 hours are critical." "Can I be with him?" Maya asked immediately. Dr. Tanner hesitated. "He's in recovery, heavily sedated and vulnerable to infection." "Please," Maya insisted. "I know he needs me. I can feel it." Something in the girl's determination swayed the veterinarian. She arranged a sterile recovery area where Maya could sit beside Phoenix's cage, her hand resting gently on his breathing blanket. Throughout the night, monitoring equipment beeped steadily as Phoenix stabilized under Maya's watchful gaze. What the medical equipment couldn't register was how, each time Maya spoke softly to Phoenix, her fingers moved a fraction more, defying her paralysis diagnosis with tiny but undeniable movements. By morning, Phoenix's condition had stabilized enough for Dr. Tanner to express cautious optimism. "His vital signs are stronger than I would have expected," she told Caroline, as they watched Maya sitting beside the recovery cage, her hand now able to gently stroke Phoenix's head through the bars. "And Maya?" Dr. Tanner asked quietly. "Has she always been able to move her arms that way?" Caroline shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "She's been quadriplegic since the accident, complete C5 injury. Her neurologist said she'd never regain function below her shoulders." "I'm not a human doctor," Dr. Tanner cautioned, "but what I'm seeing defies conventional medical understanding. Have you considered getting her re-evaluated?" Over the next week, a routine developed. Caroline would bring Maya to the clinic each morning, where she would sit with Phoenix for hours. The cat's recovery, while still precarious, progressed faster than Dr. Tanner had dared hope. The fractures began healing, his appetite returned, and his golden eyes grew brighter. But the most astonishing changes were in Maya. First her fingers, then her wrists, then her arms. Gradually movement returned where medical science had declared it impossible. By the end of the week, she could move both arms fully, though her legs remained unresponsive. "It's like the pathways are reconnecting," Dr. Hernandez, Maya's neurologist, said after conducting new tests. He'd been skeptical when Carolyn described Maya's improvements, but was now witnessing them firsthand. "I've never seen anything like this in a complete spinal cord injury." Dr. Tanner had her own theory. "There's something about their connection, Phoenix and Maya. They're healing each other somehow." On the 8th day, when Phoenix was strong enough to be removed from his cage, Dr. Tanner placed him carefully in Maya's lap. The cat immediately curled against her stomach, purring loudly. Maya stroked his head with newly responsive fingers and then gasped as a sensation she hadn't felt in 6 months tingled through her legs. Phoenix's tail was brushing against her knee, and she could feel it. News of Maya's remarkable recovery spread quickly through medical circles. What had begun as a private miracle soon attracted attention from neurological researchers, media outlets, and eventually bureaucratic complications. Experimental therapy without proper protocols, insisted Daniel Webster, the hospital administrator who had originally dismissed Maya's case as hopeless. He arrived unannounced at Dr. Tanner's clinic 1 month after Maya and Phoenix's first encounter. The girl needs to be admitted for proper scientific observation. The animal should be removed from the equation so we can determine what's actually causing these neurological changes. Maya, now able to move both arms freely and feel sensation in her upper thighs, clutched Phoenix protectively. The cat had made his own miraculous recovery, his golden eyes bright and alert, his once broken leg now bearing weight. You can't separate them, Dr. Tanner argued. Their connection is facilitating this recovery. Disrupting it could reverse her progress, Webster scoffed. Mystical animal connections aren't recognized medical treatments. This could be spontaneous nerve regeneration being incorrectly attributed to the presence of a pet. He turned to Caroline. As her guardian, you need to make a rational decision. Our neurological ward can offer specialized care, imaging, and potentially groundbreaking treatment. Caroline, overwhelmed by the medical terminology and impressive credentials, wavered. If it would help Maya walk again— No! Maya cried, showing more emotion than she had in months before meeting Phoenix. He's not just helping me walk, he's helping me live. I won't go without him. Webster's expression hardened. Animals aren't permitted in our facility, but this is about your recovery, not a stray cat. I've taken the liberty of contacting Child Protective Services to review this situation. A guardian allowing unconventional treatment rather than proven medical care might be considered negligent. The threat hung in the air, causing Phoenix to arch his back and hiss at Webster, while Maya's eyes filled with tears of frustration and fear. Everything they had gained now seemed on the verge of being torn apart by medical bureaucracy. Dr. Tanner stepped between Webster and Maya's wheelchair. Before you make threats involving CPS, perhaps you should witness what's actually happening here. Her voice was steady but firm. Maya, are you willing to demonstrate? Maya nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. First, please remove Phoenix from your lap, Dr. Tanner instructed. Caroline carefully lifted Phoenix and moved several feet away. Almost immediately, the progress in Maya's condition became evident. Her fingers began to tremble, losing their steady control. Within minutes, her arms grew heavy and less responsive. This happens every time they're separated for more than a few minutes, Dr. Tanner explained, documenting the changes with her phone camera. Now, please return Phoenix. As soon as the cat was back in Maya's lap, the transformation was unmistakable. Her movements became fluid again, and color returned to her cheeks. Phoenix purred loudly, his vibrations seemingly flowing through Maya's body. Now for the most compelling evidence, Dr. Tanner said. Maya, show him what you practiced yesterday. With Phoenix settled securely in her lap, Maya focused intently. Slowly, visibly straining with effort, she lifted her right foot an inch off the wheelchair footrest. The movement was small, but undeniable. A motion impossible for someone with a complete C5 spinal injury. Webster's clinical detachment faltered. That's significant motor recovery. Only when Phoenix is with her, Caroline added, finding her voice. I've documented everything. When they're separated, her condition regresses within hours. Dr. Hernandez, who had been observing quietly from the doorway, stepped forward. I've reviewed her original scans. This defies neurological understanding, but the results speak for themselves. Webster frowned, still skeptical. Even if there's some connection, proper research protocols would destroy the very phenomenon you want to study, Dr. Hernandez interrupted. Sometimes medicine needs to observe before intervening. I'm recommending an in-home study with non-invasive monitoring." Maya's eyes filled with tears of relief as she stroked Phoenix's head. The cat stretched up to touch his nose to her chin, a gesture that had become their ritual of mutual support. 3 months after Maya and Phoenix first found each other, Dr. Hernandez presented their case to the International Conference on Neurological Regeneration, with Caroline's permission. The medical community remained divided, some dismissing it as coincidence or placebo effect, others suggesting a new frontier in understanding neural plasticity and recovery. Through it all, Maya and Phoenix continued their parallel healing journeys. Each week brought new progress. Maya regaining movement in her legs, Phoenix's surgical scars fading into his growing coat. Dr. Tanner had formally adopted Phoenix to prevent any legal complications, but everyone understood he belonged with Maya. Aunt Caroline had transformed their apartment, making it fully accessible while accommodating Phoenix's needs. The walls, once bare, now displayed Maya's artwork, drawings of her and Phoenix created with hands that doctors had declared would never move again. On a crisp autumn morning, exactly 6 months after their first encounter, Maya sat in her therapy room with Phoenix curled in her lap. Dr. Hernandez and Dr. Tanner observed from the doorway as physical therapist Sarah guided Maya through strengthening exercises. "Ready to try again?" Sarah asked, positioning the walking bars. Maya nodded, determination etched on her face. She gently placed Phoenix on his special cushion next to the bars, close enough to maintain their connection, but safe from being stepped on. With Sarah's support, Maya raised herself from the wheelchair and gripped the parallel bars. Phoenix watched intently, his golden eyes never leaving Maya's face. As she struggled to take her first step, he made a soft, chirping sound, the special vocalization he used only with her. One step, then another. Sweat beaded on Maya's forehead as she focused all her concentration on moving forward. By the 4th step, tears streamed down Caroline's face. By the 6th, Dr. Hernandez was frantically taking notes. When Maya reached the end of the bars, Phoenix leapt gracefully onto the platform to meet her, rubbing against her legs that could now feel his touch. "It's not just physical," Dr. Tanner whispered. "They've healed each other's spirits." The medical recovery followed the emotional one. Maya lowered herself to sit on the platform, gathering Phoenix into her arms as happy tears flowed. "We did it," she whispered against his fur. "We did it together." 1 year later, the rehabilitation center, where Maya and Phoenix had found each other, was no longer scheduled for demolition. As Maya's case gained attention in medical journals and her recovery continued to defy explanation, researchers and donors became interested in studying and supporting the phenomenon. Dr. Hernandez successfully petitioned the hospital board to purchase the abandoned facility, while Dr. Tanner organized a community fundraising campaign that drew support from medical professionals nationwide. Together, they transformed the once condemned building into the Phoenix Center for Integrated Recovery, a facility where patients with spinal injuries could participate in an innovative program that included animal-assisted therapy. Maya, now 14 and walking with only a slight limp, volunteered there every weekend alongside Phoenix, who wore a custom therapy animal vest. Together, they visited patients who had received the same devastating prognoses Maya once had. While no other partnerships had produced results quite as dramatic as theirs, the emotional benefits were undeniable, and several patients had shown unexpected improvements in mobility and mood. Dr. Tanner had reopened her veterinary practice in an adjoining wing, specializing in rehabilitation for severely injured animals that might otherwise have been euthanized. The center had become a place of second chances, where the healing connection between humans and animals was respected as a powerful force. Aunt Caroline, who had once been overwhelmed by caregiving responsibilities, now directed the center's family support program, helping others navigate the challenges she had faced. The apartment she shared with Maya was filled with laughter now, and plans for Maya's return to dance classes, adaptive at first, but with goals that grew more ambitious each day. On sunny afternoons, Maya could often be found in the center's garden, replanted and thriving, with Phoenix stretched out beside her on a bench, his golden eyes half closed in contentment as she read aloud from her journal. The miraculous bond between them remained as strong as ever, but had expanded to encompass others in need of hope. Sometimes the greatest healing comes from the most unexpected connections, Maya told a documentary crew filming their story. As she spoke, Phoenix gently nudged her hand, as if affirming her words. We found each other when we were both broken, and somehow that's exactly why we could heal each other. Thus ends the extraordinary tale of a paralyzed girl who reached for a dying cat, and the incredible journey of healing and hope that followed their miraculous connection. If this story of courage, compassion, and second chances has touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales that remind us of the profound bonds between humans and animals and the healing power of connection.